Welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Star Wars Fandom discussion. If you missed out on episode 3, you can find it on our channel or linked in the description below. So again, let's welcome back myself, Louise, Damien, Matt and Sophie, where we're now going to talk about the Star Wars film, as a whole. What's our favourite one, most hated? I think to start it off, my favourite one would be Return of the Jedi, I think. I think the most hated would be, excuse me, Attack of the Clones.
Oh,
well, I'm quite shocked by that though.
Mm-hmm. Just don't know. It's just not my favourite one. I don't think. I think Return of the Jedi is my favourite. Just because we went through everything with them, and I just think the ending is chef's kiss. I don't think it could have went any better than what it did.
yeah, it was pretty special.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi was really good. I agree with you. It doesn't really get the love that it deserves, I think, Return of the Jedi, because it sort of falls under the wayside, where Empire Strikes Back is regarded by a lot of people as the greatest Star Wars film. It is brilliant. It's not my favourite, but yeah, Return of the Jedi, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, there's so many epic moments. Like,
takes a while to get going, though, doesn't it?
yeah, it does take a while
Yeah.
to get going, but when it does, Admiral Akbar, it's a trap, and that thing, there's Lando, that thing's operational. And
Yeah,
hands down there, on Endor, trying to blow up the generator, and you've got Vader and Luke fighting, and the way everything's intersecting with each other. That climax to that film is, it's great. But like Matt said, it does take a long while to get going.
mm-hmm.
See, I think
What is it?
That's my least favourite original, I think. Yeah.
Oh, really?
What?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, sorry. I'm so sorry. When he said that, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to break Louise's heart. Yeah, it just, for me, it just takes ages to actually get going. Like, it spends like, how long is it in Tatooine at the start? You're like,
It's a good hour in Tatooine, maybe even more.
Yeah. So when I watched it last, I was like, I'm ready for you to get to the Ewoks and let's get going now. Whereas I think A New Hope is just wonderful. Empire Strikes Back is great, but yeah, it's my. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still in like the top 6 for me. Like, but it's my least favorite like original. Yeah. Sorry, Louise.
So, what was it about Attack of the Clones that wasn't quite your jam then, Louise?
I think it just fell into being like, because obviously it's the second one and sort of like the middle between the first and the third. I think parts of it just went on for a bit too long. Like, I don't hate it, it's just not my favourite one. I think compared to the first and the third, it's just not as good as both of them. There's obviously some moments in it that are amazing. I think when obviously Padme and Anakin and Obi-Wan are all stuck in the arena and they all have to get out.
Yeah.
One of my favourite bits about it, but I do think some parts of it are a bit too long.
Yeah, I get that. I think the bits with Obi-Wan and Django on Camino were cool.
I loved that.
Yeah, I loved that. I love Django. I loved the PlayStation 2 game Bounty Hunter, where you played as Django. Game. But I really like Attack of the Clones. I know it seems to be the most hated, or not rather hated, but the most disliked prequel. There are certain aspects of it. I do think that the start of it's a bit wavy, a bit shaky, but I think Camino's great. I think the Droid Factory and the Battle of Geonosis and the arena's great. Count Dooku's a bit of a shaky villain in those films. He's fantastic in the Clone Wars and other content. I can't wait to see him in the animated series coming up with a young Count Dooku training Qui-Gon. That's going to be very good. But it seemed like he was rushed out of nowhere for Attack of the Clones, which is a shame because it's Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee's awesome. But yeah, I can see where you come from with that, Louise, definitely. I would say it's my least favourite out of the films, though. Yeah, it's better for me. It's better than the sequels, but it's probably my least favorite prequel.
It's definitely my most. It would be one of the ones that. So it's not going to be in my kind of top. It's not my favorite, but it's actually probably one of the ones that I reach for the most. If I was just like, I'm just going to put a Star Wars on, it's actually Attack of the Clones is probably the one that I've watched the most for some reason. I don't know what it is about it for me that just kind of it hits all of the point, like you're saying. I love the stuff in Kamino. I think I always quite sort of badass people having badass fights, and then again, like with Geonosis, when all the Jedi show up and that, I think, yeah, for some reason for me, if I were to gravitate towards a Star Wars film to rewatch the most, it's that one. I can be in the mood for that, where for me personally, Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars film. I just think, like you say, they scored a home run with that one. For me, it is just the absolute perfect film, but I do acknowledge that you have to be in the mood for it, because you're like, do I want to cry multiple times tonight? No. Okay. We might put Attack of the Clones on.
It feels like a war film as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like in the likes of like Saving Private Ryan and those sort of style of films, it's a war. It's very gritty, and that final battle is just amazing.
I know, but I think there's something. It's like I can get very, very emotional at the sort of every time Chirrut is on the screen, and every time that man opens his mouth and says things, I am one with the Force is with me. I was just, if I were getting a Star Wars tattoo, it would probably be that, It's just, I lost my mind when I heard, as a fan of kind of the old Hong Kong cinema films growing up, when I heard that Donnie Yen was going to be in a Star Wars film, I was just like, life's complete. I've peaked. I peaked at Rogue One. Oh, it's just so good. And then him and Baze together, I'm just like, it's such a wonderful relationship on the screen there. And then, yeah, to me, you've then got the perfect energy of K2. He just kind of injects that little bit of spark that we need, and like you say, in an otherwise quite gritty film. To me, Rogue One is just perfect. And then I think you're in bits at the end, and you're just like, how am I going to get through this? And they just do a bit of Darth Vader porn right at the end.
Darth Vader
bam,
porn.
Corridor of Doom.
It's like a horror film, isn't it?
I know.
Yeah, just the way they portrayed him there. But
I remember watching that in the cinema. I went to a midnight showing of Rogue One. And just obviously, the complete destruction, and you're like, oh, that was really sad. And then and then all of a sudden you go to this corridor and I just remember feeling just the like the simmering of like the cinema, realizing that potentially what might happen, and then all of a sudden you see the lightsaber and you're like, shut. And I just remember, like, obviously, when you watch YouTube videos and American crowds go absolutely mental.
Yes.
We just don't do that. We literally watch in silence and we go, yes, that was lovely at the end. But this time the cinema literally was like, whoa, literally the whole universe. And it was just, and the music is just great.
The score for it is incredible.
What I love about that,
Michael Giannaccio, was it? Who did it? I can't remember.
It was. Yeah.
I probably absolutely murdered that surname, so apologies. But it was. That's a great soundtrack. One of my favourite Star Wars soundtracks, and it isn't by the great John Williams. So
I know. Yeah. I was so surprised, and you can't believe at the end as well with when Vader's in that corridor and he holds his breath to start. He held his breath,
and when he lifts his fist up and he's got the guy, he's holding the guy with the Force on the ceiling, and he's just walking on whilst holding his fist while he's slashing the other guys, and he releases him and slashes him whilst he falls down. Yeah, and just going back to what you said earlier was sort of like the badass scenes on like Kamino. Is Jango Fett held his own against Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is one of the greatest Jedi Masters of all time, and he's got a lightsaber. But then you go to that scene with the Darth Vader corridor, and it's all trained soldiers. There must be 20 trained soldiers in this corridor of Vader, and they are terrified of him. And he is playing with them. He's toying with them, and yeah, it's just it's badass. And but going off Rogue One again, and another scene that I think is amazing from that film, which doesn't get possibly the love it deserves, is in the space battle with the Corellian frigate, where they push against the Star Destroyer.
Yes.
And then the score, just as they're like charging into it, they're like push all reverse thrusters, and they're crashing it. They're sacrificing themselves to take down massive ship, to destroy the ship, or with the score in the background. Oh, it's perfect. It really was.
I think it was, yeah, the element of sacrifice. And I probably should do a quick, like, just in case people haven't seen Rogue One. There's sort of a spoiler alert here, but there's that sickening feeling, isn't there? That I will never forget the first time I was watching it, and you suddenly go, wait, no one's getting out of this. Like,
Yeah.
there's that, it dawns, because you think, well, this is Star Wars, someone's gonna. I kind of thought like Bodhi would get out of there. I was like, he's the pilot, maybe he'll fly off and he's the one telling this story. And then you're like, no, wait, no one's getting out. And it's just that feeling, that kind of, yeah, you're feeling queasy as you're going closer and closer to the tower, where then you've got like Jin and Cassian, and then and obviously Krennic, and he just gets the perfection of an ending for that man. I always feel like Tarkin really aimed at him in that, and it just then led so perfectly into A New Hope. So then, when if you ever do kind of do a back to back of Rogue One into New Hope, and that kind of Leia fleeing away from that battle, from that sacrifice, you're like, whoa. When she says this is our most desperate hour, you're like, yeah. I get it, just stunning.
It's stunning.
Have we spoken about Solo?
No, we keep saying this, don't we? We keep going, oh yeah, I forgot about Solo.
We touched on it briefly, but we haven't really spoken about it.
Yeah.
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
It was really harmless, and in a sense that, I mean, I think I said the portrayal. I hated the way that they killed off some of the characters straight away. And I thought there was a lot more they could do, but in terms of its, a story in a whole, I thought it's pretty inoffensive and pretty good. Like as a one-off, like I'd say, if someone wanted to watch a Star Wars film, which the whole family would enjoy for an evening, and they didn't want to get too invested, Solo's fine. Like,
Definitely.
Solo.
I think Solo got the major Disney treatment. I think like it doesn't really have a purpose. Like they just kind of they just kind of made it. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. I don't know. I think it's definitely had the Disney treatment, and I just think it didn't feel Star Warsy.
Yeah, as Louise said, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I thought it was decent, it was fun. But my biggest issue is Solo, and it's not even really an issue, but it just feels like they tried to cram in Han Solo's greatest hits in that one film. So he done the Kessel Run in less than 7 parsecs in that film. He's met Chewie in that film. He's won the Falcon off of Lando in that film. It felt like they tried to cram everything that made Solo so iconic from the original films that you heard about, with all these different things. They just sort of, it happened in the space of like one weekend. When you imagine it really like happened over the course of like Solo's whole life, Han's whole life, and really it just happened in the space of this one weekend, all these amazing things. And it's just, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but it's a little bit of a fault I have with it.
The type of film that should have been made a TV series, I think.
That's what I was gonna say. 100%.
If you spanned them all in an episode, and I think even if he did one of those iconic things per episode or per 2 episodes, it would have made like a bigger impact than just he did them all in film. I completely agree. It is one of the ones that I thought it should have been
a TV show, because then as well we could have got so much more, because you know we're all fans here of Clone Wars and Rebels, and like all the kind of hints of Crimson Dawn, and you were thinking that's got so much potential, and like I want to know what goes on with Kira. And Han could have you know, if you want Han as that anchor, he could have skirted those storylines, could have, with his connection with Kira. So yeah, it was a bit of there were certain elements of missed opportunity. I was a little wary of going into it, because as I think I said in an earlier episode, his original origin story was actually my kind of introduction to Star Wars books in his trilogy. So I was like, oh, how's this gonna compare? Because I quite enjoyed how he met Chewie in those books, but I have to say I really, really loved his introduction to Chewie in Solo, and actually just Chewie in general in Solo I thought was fantastic. He was done really, really well, and I just loved seeing their kind of friendship grow. And it's such a beautiful friendship to then get taken so horribly away from us later.
And Lando I thought was amazingly by Donald Glover. So I thought he was brilliant. And I remember seeing a couple of years ago that Disney planned to do a Lando TV show, didn't they? But I've not really heard much on that since, because I imagined we'd get more Kira in that show, and I imagine we probably would have got more Crimson Dawn and possibly a bit more as well. But sadly, I don't know what's going on with that at the moment, which is a shame, because I thought Donald Glover was brilliant. Really brilliant.
And Enfys Nest was so cool as well.
It was really cool. Yeah.
So I just instantly just iconic, you know, when she just kind of appeared there.
And again, great music for her when they turned up. The music for them was dope. And I know we mentioned it in previous episodes, and the standalones. I'm glad the standalones are getting love, because I do think they're kind of forgotten. And we've definitely mentioned the prequels a lot. The sequel trilogy has to be mentioned if we're talking about the films.
It does, yeah.
And it's always tough to talk about, because lots of people have very strong opinions. So, and I think I will duck out. I'll duck in and duck out very quickly. I enjoyed what they were, but I wanted them to be more planned out. There we go. I think that's done, as it were. I would say, you know, Episode 9 is possibly my least favorite Star Wars film. So, and that sucks. I didn't want it to be, and that's not a criticism of any of the actors who portrayed their characters. I just think the whole 3 films was just poorly written as a whole, sadly.
Yeah, poorly written, poorly planned out, and as we touched upon earlier on before we began filming, how they handled Finn's character, absolute disgrace, I think. Absolute disgrace.
Yeah. Man, I'm not surprised John Boyega is upset with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I get the impression,
because they led the fans to believe that he was going to be more than he was. They led him to believe that he was going to be more than he was, and he was essentially comic relief.
Yeah.
And find out, I think it was in the novelization that he was actually Force sensitive, and you're like,
and it's just such a cool premise for a story. A former stormtrooper becoming the Jedi. That's so unique, and it's so cool. And
you could have had them both be Jedi together. That would have been amazing as well. That would have been really fun.
That would have been
I would have dug that, and then you would have had the comic relief of Poe, who would have been like, oh, I'm with these guys, but I'm not really with these guys. And I think Oscar Isaac would have played that really, really well.
Would have done,
So yeah, it is a shame. And I know we've mentioned Kylo Ren, and you kill your dad, mate. You're done. You're done for me. So you just and for once, I know, but the thing is, George Lucas would completely disagree with what I'm about to say, because he had a really great comment, and I still agree with it. Star Wars is a kids' film. Let's be honest, it is. And therefore, you know, he would always say that hope should always win. And you know what Star Wars is all about? Hope. It's one of the first words, you know, a new hope, right? But I thought Kylo's redemption was one redemption too many. I think sometimes you can show that evil
does win. Yeah.
does occasionally win over people, but you can still redeem over that evil, and you can still win over that evil. But sometimes people do fall dark too far, and I think that would have been a really brave move to do with Kylo. And Disney have done that in other films. They've shown that evil can go too far, and I thought they could have done it, but they didn't.
It's interesting that you say that as well, Matt, because the original plan for Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, it was completely different, and there was going to be sort of an insurrection on Coruscant with Finn leading the people of Coruscant in a rebellion against the First Order, but also, obviously, we're all fans of Clone Wars here. An iconic arc from the Clone Wars, which was the Legend of Mortis, which was the father, the son, and the daughter, which was going to play a massive part originally in the Rise of Skywalker. Rey and Kylo's final battle was going to take place on Mortis. The son and the daughter were going to be involved in it, and Kylo wasn't going to be redeemed. And it's a shame they didn't go with that, because I thought that would have been. I like Palpatine. I don't think they should have brought him back, and I think going that route of Mortis and with introducing the father, son, the daughter to the wider audience, with Kylo not being redeemed, would have been a really ballsy and strong move to go with.
I feel like they had no choice in the end but to bring Palpatine back, because I think that's been my main gripe with the direction of the sequels, is they had no villain. And we had Snoke, but then he died, and then then they were sort of thinking, well, how can we bring this, so let's link it back to Palpatine, and that makes sense. And I think the prequels, he's still there from Episode 1. I know he's not our villain, so to speak, because we're watching the fall of Anakin, but he's there from Episode 1. We know who he is, because we're like, whoa, that's the Emperor. And I think that's the thing that, I don't know, they got a bit lost in translation in the sequel trilogy, where they were so focused on, oh, let's redeem Kylo, let's bring him back to the light. But you're like, he was only just gone over full on to the dark side. And I think Star Wars is about good versus evil, and I just don't know that then we had Rey kind of wavering between dark and light and things like that, and I just sort of thought I was actually missing that quite classic Star Wars villain, because Star Wars has created arguably the most iconic villain ever in any fictional sort of franchise, and then we sort of just didn't have that in the sequels at all. We had Snoke for a bit, and then not, and then Kylo, and then not, and then, okay, crap, let's bring back Palpatine just to have another big bad.
Definitely, because like you said, we didn't have that, and I personally would have liked it if Snoke played more of a role. I remember when I first watched The Force Awakens, I firmly believed that Snoke was going to be revealed as Darth Plagueis.
Okay.
I thought that's the route they were going, and I thought that would have tied quite nicely into Palpatine without bringing Palpatine back. But
I liked it.
Yeah,
there was something, wasn't there, that he was the first Sith, like that he was the first Jedi to then fall to the dark, so that he was like truly ancient. And there was some fan theories around that, which could have been really cool. I remember the who is Snoke era of the fandom timeline.
But also, when he shows up in The Force Awakens, the score that plays in the background is a variation of the theme that plays when Palpatine is telling Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis.
The opera.
Yeah, the opera, which is a lot of people thought, oh shit, this is going to end up being Plagueis, and obviously, spoilers, he ended up being a Palpatine clone. But yeah, it's a shame. It really is a shame. It didn't have a villain.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's definitely some sort of drama going on between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, because they didn't plan anything with each other, and it felt like they were both trying to outdo each other.
Yeah, I can't imagine what Ryan thought when he saw that film. I can't imagine it. Pleasant words were said. But saying that, I know I've said, but some people, this was their introduction to Star Wars, and this is, they fell in love with the black and orange X-wing of Poe Dameron, which is just gorgeous. And then, Starkiller Base was their Death Star, and I think that's something that we can't dissuade from. Like, you know, we there are some amazing things within all three of those films, but as a cohesive story, I think, and I think they've learned their lesson in the sense that that's what they've done with the TV programs. I think, you know, having Dave Filoni as the overlord, Kevin Feige figure, and having, you know, directors that they trust to come in and do it, it seems to be a cohesive, we're moving forward with a plan. But it also sounds like you need to watch every single minute of Star Wars to understand. Like, I think Ahsoka is going to be basically Rebels live action. And I think
that's the impression as well.
So I think you do need to have a good idea of who these characters are before you watch it. It'll be interesting to see if they do a little bit of, or not as in hand holding for those people who haven't watched Rebels, because I think there'll be lots of people who haven't. So it'll be interesting to see what the future of Star Wars looks like, because it doesn't seem to be films.
I
It's
think
whether they pull that off as well, Matt, because like you said, if it's going to be no matter what, even if it's not going to be Rebels live action, they need to touch on everything that Ahsoka went through in Rebels, like such as the timeline between the worlds and all that sort of stuff. So yeah,
and they're going to bring Thrawn in as well, aren't they?
And
Sophie
Thrawn,
and Eva.
Sorry, Louise, you were about to say something.
I think see, the thing that annoyed me with the ninth film, and it didn't annoy me, it was the way people reacted, was when like Kylo and Rey kissed. I think a lot of like diehard Star Wars fans were pissed off, and I don't get why, because every single so the first three, and then obviously 4, 5 and 6, they all had some sort of like romance in it, and I think especially in 8 they built up this tension between the both of them, and then obviously they had the kiss, and then obviously he just died, but it just annoyed me the way people went on about them just kissing, as if all the other Star Wars films didn't have any of that.
Star Wars has always been a romance. It's always been you know, love conquers all, and but going off that, I thought my man Finn was going to get the Rey romance. I thought that's how it was. The Force Awakens, you know, he sort of took a back seat in The Last Jedi, but he was still trying to make his way towards Rey. Rose got in the way a little bit, but you know, Chad Kylo come in and stole the girl off him.
I think people had a gripe, didn't they? And, you know, I would normally be the front of the queue and, you know, but Kylo murdered Han Solo and you know, Rey's got no business going about kissing him. But like you say, they built that up from like you say, episode 8, and also like Padme knew that Anakin had done some pretty shifty stuff, and she married him and had his children, and you're like,
he got turned on by him. It's pretty clear in the scene that she liked that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like Star Wars has got a track record of it, so it just didn't. Yeah, like you say, I think the sequels definitely evoked some strong reactions. I suppose. I mean, does everyone have like a moment that they did? Because, like you said, I think like Matt alluded to earlier, like there's a lot of really great stuff that came out of the sequels. Does anyone have like a particular favorite moment from the sequel trilogy?
I think hearing like everyone speak to Rey, I think that was probably my favourite bit.
Yes, that was cool.
Yeah.
All the Jedi's voices talking to her, because they had
that was cool.
a lot, didn't they? Didn't they have Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon?
Ahsoka was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Yoda was in there.
Qui-Gon.
That was really cool.
There's a lot of different Clone Wars Jedi that were in there as well. Kanan was there.
Yes, he was, wasn't he? Yeah, that was a cool moment.
I'd say my favourite moment would probably come from The Force Awakens. It would be with Finn. Like I said, I thought Finn was done so dirty, and when he picked up that lightsaber, when Rey's knocked against the tree and Kylo's there and he's punching his wound that Chewie's inflicted on him, and Kylo's screaming traitor at him, and Finn just picks up that lightsaber. He's like, "Come on!" and he you know, he's obviously getting battered by Kylo, but he's still showing heart. He's still, you know,
Yeah.
trying to defend himself and Rey against him. I thought that even though the sequels aren't as good as, in my opinion, as the originals and the prequels, I do think that fight between the sort of Kylo and Rey and Finn versus Kylo, that's one of my favorite fights because it's vicious.
Yeah.
Kylo's got a vicious fighting style. Rey's untrained, and she's, you know, they're all that's a fight. They're fighting for their life. Usually, the lightsaber fights come across as quite choreographed. That one in particular just seemed vicious. It was a battle. It was a fight for their lives, and I love that one. That's probably my favorite moment from the sequel films. Or what's the planet that they were on in Force Awakens? Maz Kanata's planet, where
Takadana.
yeah, and Chewie's got the bowcaster, and then Han says, "Can I try that?" Chewie says, "I like this," and then Poe comes along in his X-Fighter, and he does that really wicked scene of him destroying all these TIE fighters and stormtroopers. Then Finn shouts, "That's one hell of a pilot!" Yeah, that was a cool scene as well.
Music's incredible in that one as well. The March of the Resistance, isn't it? It's just like,
that is a cool, very cool scene with the music.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
I think, I really liked. I think the shot where I can't remember her name now, but in
The Last Jedi, where she jumps into light speed,
the Holdo maneuver.
Holdo maneuver.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
the side cinema was fantastic, and I thought the Battle of Crate was just visually stunning with the white and the red. And yeah, I'm a big. I thought the Last Jedi was great, and then I do think, you know, in the Force Awakens, I always pop at the line of "That's not how the Force works," just because it's just brilliant. It's so Han, and it's just so brilliant. There are some incredible moments, and yeah, those are some of the ones that just spring to mind immediately. I haven't watched them in a long time, so I need to readdress that. But yeah, they are part of our Star Wars life.
I'm right in the thick of a rewatch at the moment, so it's bringing it all back to me. And I think, I agree. The Holdo maneuver was awesome. Like you said, you could hear a pin drop in the cinema when she did that. But mine as well. Just if people have heard the previous few episodes, then in keeping in my very much enjoying random evil characters, I love General Hux's speach on Starkiller Base. When he's
fantastic. It's brilliant.
I think I've pretty much got it memorized, and I just
recite it to us, please.
It's just that, like, and their cherished fleet. It's
awesome. It really is such a sick moment.
He's just like, he's
just
unhinged.
Mirror, can't you?
Exactly, and he's just unhinged, and I'm here for it, to be honest. And he's another one, but I mean, it's less of a where Damien just say, Finn was done dirty, and I really do feel Hux was done dirty in those films as well, because he was just such a cool, vicious character. And again, he became comic relief, although, obviously Finn was done much dirtier. But in my sort of, my evil character loving heart is a bit like, well.
And that's the thing, because back when Force Awakens come out, we didn't have Rebels, and Hux was so cool, and he was standing up to Kylo, he was standing up to Snoke. And I remember a lot of the discussion online was, is Hux going to be our sort of canon version of Thrawn? Like, obviously not actual Thrawn himself, but is he going to be like the canon interpretation of him? And like, Force Awakens Hux absolutely could have been. And like you said, definitely got done dirty and he definitely became a comic relief character, but that's
although I did like it when on Crate, because his looks that he just exchanges with, he is just that colleague at work, isn't he, that's just like constantly on at you. And after they've shot at Luke and he's, do you think you've got him? I was like, oh, he's just so cutting.
He is fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great character.
Thank you so much to everyone who's listening, and if you like the discussion that we had, we also have a community Discord, which is Fantasy Fellowship, and you can find more information over on our Instagram page at fantasy_fellowship, our Twitter at fanfellowship, and we also have a website which is www.fantasy-fellowship.co.uk. This was our final Star Wars fandom discussion video, but if you did enjoy it, be sure to hit like and make sure you subscribe to us to keep up to date with more Fantasy Fellowship videos and to find out what our next fandom discussion will be.